pensez de ce nouveau conseil là, du premier ministre Carney et de l'état de la relation Canada-américaine?
L'état? Quel état?
Bien, l'état de cette relation-là.
Comment ça va?
Ça fait 5 mois, il n'y a pas de négociation. M. Carney a été élu avec la promesse principale qu'il allait livrer une victoire face aux Américains en éliminant les tarifs. 1 an plus tard, les tarifs ont doublé et s'appliquent beaucoup plus largement aux produits. On a la pire économie dans le G7, la seule économie en déclin, et M. Carney n'a rien livré. On apprend maintenant que le Mexique va commencer des négociations formelles avec les États-Unis, en même temps que M. Carney n'a pas eu des négociations depuis 5 mois. Alors, c'est assez des illusions. Les seuls pourparlers que M. Carney a eus, c'est des vidéos de YouTube. Donc, on n'a pas besoin des illusions, des belles paroles, des réunions pour des réunions. On a besoin de contrer des tarifs sur l'aluminium, l'acier, le bois d'œuvre, les autos, et M. Carney a échoué totalement dans cet effet.
What do you think of Aaron O'Toole being on this council?
It's great. At the end of the day, though, what we need is action. Mark Carney was elected on the singular promise that he would negotiate a win with the Americans. Since that time, American tariffs have doubled and broadened on Canadian goods. Carney's given us the worst economy in the G7, the only shrinking economy in the G7. We're hemorrhaging jobs. Just 10 days ago, the Americans hit us with much bigger tariffs on products that include Canadian steel. And what has Mark Carney done, really, in a year on this? He hasn't held negotiations in 5 months. The Mexicans are going to be at the table formally with the Americans any day. The only talks that Mark Carney is doing are YouTube videos where he's comparing himself to Sir Isaac Brock and holding up little figurines in his office. So he told all of you the other day that with his new majority he was going to stop showboating. And then a few days later, he put out a showboating YouTube video, right? The 2.6 million Canadians whose jobs depend on getting rid of these terrible American tariffs have had about enough of Mark Carney making false promises and delivering the worst economy in the G7. And by the way, you were all very critical of me. You said that I needed to be more clear in my plans with Canada-U.S. I've laid out an extremely detailed plan to counter American tariffs and to fight for U.S. trade. My position is clear. Build up leverage, use that leverage to get rid of American tariffs on aluminum, steel, autos, and lumber. What is Mark Carney's plan? What are his intentions? Has Mr. Carney even stated whether he wants to renew USMCA at all? He said yesterday trade with the U.S. is a big, or in his video, he said trade with the U.S. is a big weakness. So does that mean that he wants to end USMCA? If he wants it renegotiated, does he want a full overhaul, a few tweaks? What are his demands? Has he waved the white flag on getting rid of the tariffs on aluminum, steel, autos, and lumber? Or is he still fighting that fight? Does anybody know what Mark Carney's plan is? I don't, honestly, I mean, does anybody here know what his plan is?
You had previously suggested that there ought to be an all-party committee of some kind that would be tasked with answering exactly these questions and working in a consensus manner, I think. Do you still have that position, or do you think the majority government, that's not possible?
Sure, I think it's a great idea. But at the end of the day, what you need is to have a prime minister who's focused not on illusions and showboating, but on actually fighting the tariffs. We've got 2.6 million jobs that depend on getting rid of these tariffs. We have whole lumber towns that might disappear, towns that may not have any people in them in a couple of years if we don't get rid of softwood lumber tariffs. Windsor is reeling. A $16 billion industry in Windsor has just been smashed with increased tariffs on particularly mold making. Have you heard Mark Carney even mention it? He was busy waving around a figurine of Sir Isaac Brock, comparing himself to a 19th century war hero. And yet he doesn't have a single word to utter about the people of Windsor whose jobs are hemorrhaging in light of these new tariffs. He refuses to stand up against these wrong-headed American tariffs. He's done absolutely nothing on this file in the last year other than use it to stoke fear and distract from his catastrophic failings here at home. The worst food price inflation in the G7, the worst household debt in the G7, the worst housing costs in the G7, and the only shrinking economy in the G7. It's not surprising that he wants to distract with illusions with a record like that.
Pensez-vous, M. Poilievre, que nos liens avec les États-Unis représentent réellement une faiblesse?
Pardon?
Pensez-vous réellement que nos liens avec les États-Unis constituent une faiblesse pour le Canada?
La vraie question, c'est quoi? Si vous voulez annuler les ventes de 600 milliards de dollars, vous allez les remplacer avec quoi? Vraiment. M. Carney a eu une année. Il n'a pas signé, il n'a pas négocié une seule nouvelle entente avec un autre pays. Donc, les 2,6 millions de Canadiens qui dépendent des ventes aux États-Unis, ils vont faire quoi si M. Carney essaie d'éliminer la relation avec une rupture comme il prépare? Moi, je crois qu'on devrait se battre pour une entente sans tarif. C'est quoi l'alternative à ça? Moi, j'ai présenté un plan pour bâtir notre levier de négociation afin de se battre pour l'élimination des tarifs. C'est pas parce que les États-Unis ou le président va être généreux. Je ne suis pas naïf. C'est parce que nous avons de leviers qu'on va pouvoir se battre pour l'élimination des tarifs. Le monsieur ici a posé des questions.
Given Donald Trump's rhetoric on trade, though, and on tariffs, he calls them, the best economic policy ever. Do you really think a tariff-free deal between Canada and the U.S. is possible?
Only if you use leverage, and we've got a lot of leverage. We've got 10 of the 12 NATO-defined critical minerals. The Americans desperately need those minerals, and the only way they can get guaranteed access to a reserve of them is if they give us tariff-free access to their marketplace. The only way that they can moderate gas and housing prices is by buying our oil and our lumber. So what I say is let's use our leverage to fight for what we want, which is tariff-free trade with the United States.
They tried to impose tariffs and raise housing prices on their own citizens for 20, 30 years. Why do you think something would change now?
Well, it did change when Prime Minister Harper was in office. He was up against a very tough president, George W. Bush, and yet he managed to get a tariff-free deal on softwood lumber. And not only that, he got the Americans to reimburse the tariffs they had already collected. Ever since the Liberals have been in power, those tariffs have been reinstated. And since Mr. Carney took office, the lumber tariffs have tripled, another catastrophic failure for a man who calls himself a master negotiator. So what you need to do is go to the Americans and say, this is the leverage we have, and we're going to use it, and we expect to have tariff-free trade in exchange.
You mentioned DM's tone. Do you think that needs to change, that he needs to soften it? The Americans have been clear.
Soften it, just get to work. He said the other day that he was going to stop showboating. Those were his words. And he was going to get serious. Well, a serious prime minister a year into this conflict would be able to tell you his plan. I've told you my plan. I've been very detailed in my plan. Nobody knows Mark Carney's plan, probably not even him. He hasn't even told us whether he wants to renew USMCA. And if he doesn't, okay, tell us how he's going to replace the $600 billion of exports. Tell the 2.6 million Canadians who rely on trade with the U.S. where their jobs are going to come from. So far, he hasn't done any of that. We're a year into this. He was elected on the single promise that he would negotiate a win with the U.S. And since that time, he's been losing. Double the tariffs on steel and aluminum, triple the tariffs on lumber, broadening of tariffs out to other products that weren't formerly covered. And he's done nothing to stop it other than to wave the white flag.
Si jamais M. Carney
won't negotiate in public because
I'm not saying he should negotiate in public, but he should tell us what his plan is to fight American tariffs and to get tariff-free access to the U.S. That's what he should be doing now.
Si jamais, monsieur, si jamais...
Qu'est-ce qu'il a fait? sauf qu'accepter des tarifs doublés par les Américains sur l'aluminium et l'acier et triplés sur le bois d'œuvre, en même temps que les tarifs sont maintenant plus larges sur d'autres produits qui n'avaient pas été couverts auparavant. Il n'y a pas eu des négociations depuis 5 mois, en même temps que le Mexique fait du progrès. Donc, il est arrivé un moment où les 2,6 millions de Canadiens qui dépendent des ventes aux États-Unis à avoir un premier ministre qui se bat pour eux au lieu de faire des drames et des illusions.
Si jamais M. Carney vous invite dans ce Conseil Canada-américain, est-ce que vous dites oui?
Oui, absolument. Mais les conseils, je pense que c'est une bonne idée d'accepter les idées des autres partis. En même temps, il faut des vraies actions. Les Canadiens peuvent se parler, mais nous sommes tous d'accord. On ne veut pas des tarifs américains. Donc, on doit parler à l'extérieur afin de se battre contre les tarifs américains. Le Conseil tout le monde sur le Conseil va dire oui, on veut un fin aux tarifs. On est tous d'accord là-dessus. J'ai dit ça au Premier ministre que j'étais prêt à travailler avec lui là-dessus. Mais oublions pas que le vrai problème, c'est qu'on doit se battre contre les tarifs aux États-Unis. C'est ce que j'ai fait quand j'ai fait ma tournée au Sud.
The critical minerals.
Comments the other day. What do you think of Howard Lutnick's comments?
It sounds like more bluster to me.
The critical minerals reserve you talked about as using leverage, though, wouldn't that take time to build up, for mines to open, even if you approve them tomorrow?
The leverage is here today. The leverage is here right now because we can simply say to the Americans, God forbid there's a conflict in the world in 3, 4, 5, 6 years. You're going to want to have access to the minerals that are necessary to defend your country. We have 10 of those 12 minerals. We are prepared to build up a reserve, plus a reserve of oil. And we will ensure that it is designed in a way that supports our interests as well as yours, if we get tariff-free access to your market. That is the leverage we have, and frankly, something that Prime Minister Carney should have been doing a year ago is making that point. But in fact, he has squandered our leverage. All the leverage he had going in, he squandered by backing down on everything while getting nothing in return. And I would also point out that he's done nothing here at home. There's still no pipeline approved, no route, no builder, not a dollar of investment. We don't know where the pipeline's going to start or end. 2 months ago, they were saying it was going to go to northern BC. This morning, they're telling the media that it might go to southern BC. This is a year into his prime ministership, after he claimed he was going to move at unprecedented speeds. Where is the plan to get a pipeline built? All the Trudeau-era anti-development laws, C-69, C-48, the industrial carbon, they're still there. The major oil companies say that these taxes will prevent us from ever producing enough oil to fill a future pipeline. It still takes 19 years to get a mine approved. Home building is falling. There's been no tax reform other than to rename the carbon tax the clean fuel standard. So he's done absolutely nothing at home except for make announcements and illusions, and he's done nothing abroad to strengthen us, despite the fact that this was his promise. My friends?
À propos du référendum en Alberta, j'aimerais juste savoir qu'est-ce que vous en pensez, vous, de ce référendum, et vous voyez-vous comme le futur chef du camp du non?
Je suis surtout un chef du camp du non. Je veux un Canada uni, un Canada où tout le monde reste uni sur le principe que le Canada est le meilleur pays au monde. Les libéraux ont divisé le pays. On se souvient qu'il y a... Est-ce que je peux compléter ma réponse? Il y a 10 ans, il n'y a pas eu des mouvements séparatistes ni au Québec ni en Alberta. Mais après 10 ans des libéraux qui ont divisé notre pays, qui se sont attaqués contre notre secteur énergétique, les libéraux ont fragilisé l'unité nationale et on a besoin d'un chef qui va unir les Canadiens, y compris les Québécois et les Albertains, surtout les jeunes, autour de la promesse du Canada. Et je vais continuer de supporter un Canada uni. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. À la prochaine.